Hi there, I'm Birgit O'Connor and welcome to my studio. For today's project, what I'd like to do is show you how to create a very simple butterfly and add a background to it. So you can use any kind of butterfly that you want. I'm going to show you how to do a monarch butterfly, and we're going to keep it very, very simple. And if you'd like the line drawing, if you look in the description below, you can find a link to the PDF. And our big goal here is actually working with the background. Now, this technique can be applied to any painting. So if you look behind me, like back here, it's that same idea. It's a great way to get depth in your paintings. I could do it to this one up here too. It's a wonderful technique, but it's going to be so manageable and very simple. I think you're really going to enjoy this. Now, what I'd like you to pay attention to is how the surface of your paper is drying. Because if it's too wet, it's going to get out of control. And if it's too dry, it's going to be distracting. So that's really going to be the trickiest part. And it really is simple, but it's something you should pay attention to. So let's get started and have some fun.
And before I get started, I just wanted to take a look at my permanent Sharpie markers here. I'll test them on the back of my pad just to make sure that they're working. They're fine. Either one is fine. Then what I'm going to do is just fill in all the dark areas like this. Now, usually I like to use a paintbrush because I'll have more of that irregular edge, and I could use India ink and that would stain the paper and I wouldn't have to worry about that. I could do it that way, or I can keep it really simple and use a permanent Sharpie marker. They're both going to give me a slightly different effect, and in the original painting here I ended up using masking. But let's do it this way. Let's keep it, like I said, very simple. So I'm going to go ahead, go up to the edge of my pencil drawing, right through here. I'm going to go ahead and paint around my little white dots on the wings. This is just going to take a tiny bit of time. Let's just paint around the little white and orange dots. And the reason why I'm doing it this way is because I don't necessarily want that black to smear. Now, in the original lesson, I approached it differently because I had a particular technique that I was trying to simplify for a cluster of butterflies. But you get the idea. And if you can make a slightly irregular edge, that would be nice. Makes it more interesting. Right through here, I'm going to go ahead and bring this line down a little bit more. I'm also lifting my pen up so I don't have such an even line here. I'm trying to break it up a little bit. So one reason why I'm doing it this way is I'm trying to eliminate using masking. Now, when it comes to these lines, I don't necessarily want them to be all the same size. I could use the tip right here, but I'm going to try to just do something a little different, and hopefully I'll be successful. I'm going to skip it. And I can always use the smaller tip. I just would like this to be a little irregular. Otherwise, I think it's going to look too static. Now, you may have a different thought, and that's fine. If you have ever seen a migration of monarchs, it's pretty spectacular. I'm going to turn my paper so I can access this area just a little easier. Just take your time. You can make these little dots slightly irregular too. We'll fill in the space around those circles. That way they become white. This part just takes a little time. You could always refer to the reference photo, but this is the general idea. I might be going a little quicker than I intended, but it's fine. All right, and then you can see that this isn't going to smear, and that's because I'm using the permanent Sharpie marker. Add the little white dots on the head just by making little circles like that. And remember, you can change the shape. Just make these little circles and then fill in the space around those circles. And by going dark to light, it helps establish a guide for you to follow. Let's go ahead and just fill that in. Now I'm just trying to get the impression of the butterfly. So for me, it's okay if it's off a little bit. It'll be close enough. Now, if I was doing a traditional watercolor, I would be masking the white areas, and then I would put the color in for the wings. And then after all of that is dried, I would come in and put the darks in. But remember, we're keeping this simple. Okay, you can get the idea of where we're going, and let's go ahead and do something a little different to maybe make this a little easier. Making these little circles right there. Then I'm going to paint around them. It just takes a little time. I'm going around the areas that I want to leave white or have a lighter color in them. Now you could always be more careful. Remember, making little circles. And here I forgot some of those little lines, so I'll just put some in. I'm going to skip this line up. And I'm debating, should I have used a different size pen, like from this one, but I don't necessarily want it to be so detailed. This can work fine too. Either one, or maybe a combination of both. And I do want more of an irregular line, so that's why I'm not trying to be precise, because I think this makes it much more interesting. And if I have too many thin lines, I don't think it's going to have the same impact. I'll go ahead and get the leg on. And for the antenna, I'm going to go ahead and just put that in right now. Okay, and then we're going to start painting. When I do a traditional watercolor painting, I usually think light to dark. That way I can build up my darker areas without smearing the color. But here we already have our darks in, and all we need to do now is add the color. And since I'm using student grade paper to prevent it from curling, I'm going to use a large brush and wet the back and lay it flat on the table. The other thing you could do is use a pad or a block or even tape it to a support. Now I'd like to show that the butterfly is flying around, so using the same large brush, I'm going to wet the sky area with clean water. I'd like you to notice that I'm applying the water to the outside of the butterfly, not inside. Then using your favorite blue, make a little puddle on your palette, add some water to it, see if you like it, and then add it to the corner of the paper in the sky and allow it to run into the clean water around your butterfly. And if the color isn't moving, go ahead, lift your paper up, tilt it, or even bend it in a way that the color can move. You might notice that you can create some really soft clouds. As long as it's really shiny, the color can easily move. And then once it dulls down, the color doesn't move as much, and you can easily get blooms. But if you'd like to create flowers in the background or give the impression of some texture or other things happening back there, this is the perfect time to add a little color. Now, to give the impression of the flowers, all I'm going to do is take a little quinacridone magenta or any red that you have or any pink, basically any color that you like. I'm going to spatter a little color just by tapping on my brush. Now you can see how the color has a tendency to dissolve on the wet surface. So if we were trying to do something a bit more controlled, it could easily turn into a mess. But here, we want to use this wet and duet technique to our advantage. Now to give the impression of the butterfly somewhere between the sky and the ground, I think I'll add a little yellow-green and maybe experiment with a darker green and just allow the colors to mix and meld into the background. I don't want to overbrush it, otherwise the colors are going to get muddy. I'm basically placing the colors side by side and allowing the edges to mingle. I'd like you to also try to notice the amount of water that I have on the brush, and how you can tell is how the color moves. You'll also see that I have those little white spaces in between areas of the green. And why that's happening is because that area of the paper is drier. Now, if you stood back for a moment, could you tell which area of the painting might be a little wetter than the other? Is the color dissolving? Or do you see a brushstroke? Now, as the surface is dulling down to a low sheen, what might be really interesting is to use a different color or even spatter a little clean water into it, but try not to use too much. At this point, it would be a good idea to leave the background alone and let it dry. Don't do anything else to it, or it can get very messy. But if you want to continue painting, what you could do is either take a little orange color or a little red and yellow and mix it together into an orange and fill in the large open areas of the wings. But you want to make sure you're only touching the dry area. Otherwise, the orange can explode into the rest of the painting. As you can see here, by using the permanent marker, the black isn't smearing. And we're still able to have detail, and we can just have fun with it. You can make the orange as rich as you like, or even lift a little color out or lighten the value, however you see it. And if you'd like to brighten your orange, you can always add a bit more yellow. And for those areas of orange that go further out to the tips of the wings, just fill them in. And if you need to, if the color isn't dark enough, you can always add a bit more color into the wings. Now at this point, you can go ahead and let this completely dry before you do anything else to it. But if you'd like to add a little more color into the background, while this surface is slightly damp and cool to the touch, you can come in with a darker color or a darker value and spatter a bit more color on here. And the reason why you might want to do it at this point is to avoid having hard lines. If you wanted, you could always keep the background light, and that works out very nicely to really show off our butterfly. But if you want more depth into the painting, then we're going to work with a bit more contrast. So that means I'll go with a slightly darker color and just try to create a few shapes with my brushstroke. I'm not really trying to do anything specific or create any design. I'm just adding contrast. You can really use any paint set that you like. And the reason why I'm focusing more on the student grade paints is because I want this lesson to really be accessible to everyone.
Now, before I do anything else, I think I'm going to let this dry for just a minute. Now, the surface is not completely dry. It's still a little damp, but if I come back in with a more water-to-color ratio in my watercolor blend, it could still push color away. Keep an eye on my brush strokes and the spatter that I apply, because you'll notice if the surface is damp, it's going to have a softer edge, or if it's drier, you'll see a more deliberate stroke or spot. Now, I'm really happy with this as is, but if I do want to do a little more, I can. I can just think about adding more mid-tone and darker values. And the reason why I would consider doing that is I'd be thinking of the bushes and grasses underneath the butterfly. Now, the goal for this particular project was really just to be playful and have fun, and to have a better understanding about the amount of water on the surface and using the wet and duet technique. And if you want to develop your painting more, allow it to dry, put your painting up and step back. Because really all we need is a little fine-tuning, and those areas that you think might be too dark might actually be fine once it dries. Now, I think I have plenty of color and I have a very interesting background, but I'd like my butterfly to stand out a bit more. If you wanted, you could always do a little negative painting around some of the flowers or maybe grasses in the foreground. It's all up to you. You're the artist and how you see it. And to help you have a better idea of where to go next, put your painting on a clean background or put it up and step back. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this lesson and that you now have a better idea how you can apply this technique into your own paintings. So until next time, have fun and happy painting!